need that, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening and welcome, councillors, executive leadership team, community members, council staff, tonight's ordinary council meeting. My name is Councillor Leslie Hewitt and I'm the Mayor of the Hepburn Shire Council. We'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on Jara people country, of which members and elders of the Dja Dja Wurrung community and their forebears have been custodians for many centuries. On this land, the Jara people have performed age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal. We acknowledge their living culture and their unique role in the life of this region. I would now like to invite my fellow councillors to stand and read the statement of commitment. Okay.
We, councillors of Hepburn Shire, declare that we will undertake on every occasion carry out our duties in the best interests of the community, and that our conduct shall maintain the standards of the Code of Good Governance, so that we may faithfully represent and uphold the trust placed in this council by the people of Hepburn Shire.
Thank you. Council continues to be guided by government directives and wants to do the right thing for the health of our community and during the COVID-19 pandemic. For the first time since March 2020 and the first time in the current council term, we have the public attending the meeting in person tonight, and thank you for coming. We ask that everyone be mindful of the continuing COVID-19 restrictions and please make sure that you've checked in with the QR code or sign in the sheet at the door. In the spirit of open, transparent and accountable governance, this ordinary council meeting is also being live streamed on Council Facebook page, and you will be able to view the proceedings of the meeting, councillor deliberations and voting. The meeting is also being recorded and will be made available on the council website as soon as practicable after the meeting. Council's meeting will be conducted tonight in accordance with the Local Government Act 2020, the COVID-19 Omnibus Amendment Emergency Measures Act 2020, the Minister's Good Practice Guidelines, MGPG1, virtual meetings, Council's governance rules, and the Hepburn Shire Councillor Code of Conduct. For those with public questions who are here in person, you'll be invited to read your question. If the questioner is not physically present here tonight in the chamber, and to allow the seamless flow of the meeting, I will read their questions along with Council's response, but I know that you're here, so welcome. Those addressing Council may join us in person or via Zoom if they're not able to be present in person tonight. For tonight's council meeting, we've received 2 public questions and 1 request to address council. In accordance with Chapter 6, Section 3 of our governance rules, a person, including any representative of the media, must not operate photographic, audio or video recording equipment or any other recording device at any council meeting without first obtaining the consent of the chairperson. And at this point, no one has requested that they would like to record the meeting. Permission does need to be sought if someone wants to take that footage and use it to broadcast it. I would also like to remind everyone that local government decision-making, unlike state and federal government, does not afford the benefit of parliamentary privilege, and hence no protection is afforded to councillors and council officers for comments made during meetings which are subsequently challenged in a court of law and determined to be slanderous. I would now like to introduce council officers who are present in this council meeting. Mr. Bradley Thomas, Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Andrew Burgess, Acting Director of Corporate and Community Services, Mr. Bruce Lucas, Director of Infrastructure and Development Services, Mr. Chris White, the ICT Manager, and Ms. Kristen Fort, Manager of Governance and Risk. Item 3, apologies. Mr. Thomas, do we have any apologies for tonight's meeting?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I have no apologies for tonight's council meeting.
Thank you. Item 5, declaration of conflict of interest. At any other meeting of council, must declare at the start of the meeting and leave the meeting when the item is presented to council. Councillors will be required to leave the meeting and return when the item has been resolved. At any point throughout the meeting, if any other councillor recognises that they have an indirect or a direct interest, they can flag that at that point and follow the same procedure. Councillors, I now ask if any councillor has a conflict of interest to declare. And if there are any conflicts of interest to declare, may I ask councillors to state which provision of the Act their conflict of interest satisfies and the item on the agenda that they have a conflict in. Do any councillors have a conflict of interest? Councillor Dryly?
Madam Mayor, I've got a conflict of interest on item 13.1, declaration of special rates charged for Solar Saver Scheme.
Thank you.
General.
Thank you, Councillor Dryly. Does anyone else have a conflict of interest? I note that I have a conflict of interest in relation to the general business item request for leave, which I think is item
General business.
General business item. Anyone else? Councillor Henderson.
Mayor, I too have a conflict in the same.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson.
Madam Mayor, I have the same conflict of interest as you.
Councillor Simpson, thank you. Item 6, confirmation of previous meeting minutes. Councillors, I have a recommendation before us to adopt meeting minutes from council's previous council meeting. The recommendation is that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on the 20th of April 2021 and the minutes of the special council meeting of council held on the 11th of May 2021, as previously circulated to councillors, be confirmed. I'm in search of a motion. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Henderson, seconded Councillor Hood. Councillor Henderson, do you want to speak? Councillor Hood? Any councillor want to speak to or against the motion? In which case I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. So that's Councillor Halliday, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Hood, Councillor Gray, Councillor Dryly, Councillor Henderson and myself. So I declare that the motion is carried. Item 7, there are no notices of motion that have been submitted to tonight's meeting as per the governance rule. Item 8, items of urgent business. Councillors, I'm in search of a motion to admit items of urgent business into council's agenda for tonight's meeting. Is there any items that a councillor wishes to admit to urgent business? Councillor Bray?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have a matter of urgent business relating to the statement regarding the transmission lines.
Right. So the motion that council resolves to admit the item relating to the Western Victoria Transmission Network Project proposal into urgent business in accordance with council's governance rules division 3, item 20, as the item relates to or arises out of a matter which has arisen since distribution of the agenda and cannot safely or conveniently be deferred until the next council meeting. I'm in search of a motion. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Bray, seconded Councillor Henderson. I'm going to put the motion to the vote. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. That's Councillor Henderson, Councillor Dryly, Councillor Bray, Councillor Hood, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Halliday and myself, Councillor Hewitt. And so the motion is, I declare that the motion is carried. Councillor Bray, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a motion that I have tabled. I'll read the motion, but in brief, it is a statement from council in response to the community and their concerns around the Western Vic Transmission Network program. The motion is that council supports the transition to renewable energy and acknowledges the need for new infrastructure. However, we hear our community's concerns and strongly sympathise with the real distress the Western Victorian Transmission Network project proposal is causing to our farming and wider communities. That we write to AusNet and appropriate decision-making authorities such as DELP, the Australian Energy Market Operator, and state and federal MPs, urging A, that the WVTNP environmental effects statement process properly consider and apply existing and emerging technologies and construction methods that are making underground methods of power transmission a viable option. B, that we urge the decision-making authorities to consider the wider impacts beyond the electricity market, such as non-market economic, social and environmental impacts, to enable the actual cost of the WVTNP to our community to be assessed. And C, noting council is opposed to the construction of a terminal station in valuable farming or heritage sensitive areas. Point 3, to include funding from within council's strategic planning budget towards preparing a strong submission to the environmental effects statement, highlighting the bushfire risk, threat to agricultural land and impact on historic and sensitive landscapes, and that this funding is detailed in a report to council that outlines the scope and priorities of the Strategic Planning Works program. And 4, that council communicate with its communities what action it has taken, what action it intends to take, provides opportunities for community feedback to council, and provides links to support organisations.
Thank you, Councillor Bray. I'm in search of a motion. Councillor Bray's moved the motion. Councillor Henderson seconds it. Councillor Bray, do you want to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Briefly, I just want to say that it's been probably a year and a bit since we heard about the project coming into our region. And while council has been active and involved in that process, it has not been so clear to the community what council has been doing. And I think it is time that we outline clearly and communicate that clearly with our community what council's actions are that we are taking, and also to state some clear actions that we think we should put in place going forward.
Councillor Bray. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, this isn't just about a transmission line. And as much as we want to see into the future, renewable energy and sources to power our ever-growing society, we have to take into account that this area is a special area. It's an area probably, arguably, and don't have to argue too much, that it is one of the most productive and fertile farmlands in the world. We're also applying, as a group of councils, 13 municipalities, for the World Heritage listing of our goldfields, which will be impacted by this transmission line. So we have a real bit of skin in this game. We've had people there who've worked this land since the very, very earliest days. Their descendants are still on that land, many of them. It's one of the food bowls. We produce more potatoes than anywhere else in Australia in this area. Why should we have a transmission line just run through there and affect the livelihoods of those people? Perhaps a bit unknown on this is it also runs through areas of very significant Aboriginal history and culture. So there's many reasons why this power line, Madam Mayor, should go straight up the Western Highway, underground, and the terminal station be built any other place that is suitable. And I don't just say not being a NIMBY here, but there are places where this can be built without the impact on our land. And we don't want to see the thing that is planned, where we have a terminal station with all the grids from everywhere else feeding in it, and see our beautiful volcanic cones and hills destroyed by mini solar farms that have happened in other places in the world. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Does any other councillor want to speak to the motion? Councillor Dryling.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Look, I'd just like to support other comments and just add that there is an urgency for these sorts of projects, for transmission, renewable transmission projects, given our current world situation with climate change fast descending on us. But these sort of projects need to be done sustainably, and we need sustainable communities. And this project can be sustainable, not in the current way that it's being done. So in terms of a sustainable community, we need renewables, but at the core of it, it shouldn't be driven just by economics. We need to be considering our communities, our environment, our culture, our Indigenous culture, and all these facets. And hopefully out of our EES process, we'll get a community, the best interest result for our community out of that. And this motion goes some way towards, I think, representing our community.
Thank you, Councillor Dryly. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Does any councillor wish to speak against the motion? No, in which case I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Henderson, Councillor Dryly, Councillor Bray, Councillor Hood, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Halliday, and myself, Councillor Hewitt. So I declare the motion carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We now move to item 9, the presentation of council reports. And item 9.1 is the Mayor's report. And I'd like to report to council that a great deal of good news for Hepburn Shire has happened this month. Firstly, we've had the appointment of our CEO, Mr. Bradley Thomas, and I want to take the opportunity to thank Nick Kelly from MacArthur's for his assistance with the recruitment process. We attracted a large field of applicants and we're pleased to appoint Bradley, making the decision based on his performance as acting CEO, his local government experience, which has been over 10 years, both in an emerging city, in a larger rural shire, and here in a small rural shire. His financial skills, his interpersonal skills, his relationships with other local councils and state and federal government will be of benefit to the Shire. That leads me on to an acknowledgement of the Andrews State Labor Government. In the last month, we've received, as some of you will be aware, considerable state government funding. That's included over $3 million for the construction of the Trentham Hub, over $2 million for the Trentham Sports Ground Pavilion, $500,000 for the train station at Bellato, $500,000 for Wombat Hill Gardens, and over $2 million for Hammond Park. All of that in the last month. As the Mayor, I get to be at these announcements and have my photograph taken. But I have to acknowledge that it's not been generally due to me. It's been to the work of the previous council and those councillors who are no longer here, as well as Councillor Henderson, to our past 2 CEOs, Mr. Evan King and also Bradley in his role while he was acting as CEO, to our directors that included Bradley previously and Mr. Bruce Lucas and Mr. Andrew Burgess more recently, and all the other staff who worked on these projects. It doesn't just happen, and it doesn't just happen overnight. On all of these projects as well, there's been community involvement, planning, feedback and ideas, and so I thank them as well. In particular, the Daylesford Spa Country Railway and Friends of Wombat Hill have contributed considerable amounts to these projects as well. These have been their community contributions have been very significant. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank our local member, Mary Ann Thomas, who's the Minister Regional Development, who has advocated. My personal favourite has to be the Wombat Hill Gardens. It's a great asset for the Hepburn Shire, and it is a significant part of our heritage. I remember being at a meeting around 2010 when some of this planning started, looking at what needed to be done. The trees were planted in the 1860s And at the meeting in 2010, there was a looking at what needed to be done to ensure that the Wombat Hill Gardens stayed the asset they were, not just for us, but for future generations. And I just am really grateful as the Mayor for all those people who've worked on this over since that time to ensure that this has happened. There are a number of mayoral activities that I've also undertaken during the month. I won't take up time here, they will be tabled. But particularly, I would like to comment that I was at the opening of the Judge Warung Memorial at the Dalesford Primary School and valued and was honoured by that opportunity, and to acknowledge the role of the primary school in helping our young students understand the heritage and the history from our traditional owners. Been a number of other events, but that will probably do for now. So thank you. Next councillor report, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. See my report as tabled, please.
Thank you. Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be brief. I've done a number of things within the community and within council's activities. I popped in to see the Buzz at the Chill Out Youth Ball in April, and it was great to see so many young people here, not just from Hepburn Shire, but also Macedon and Mount Alexander Shires. They've all been able to come together for a really fun event, and the dress code was very impressively original and unique. And thanks to all our youth officers who made that happen. I attended Anzac Day services. I attended the Clunes Booktown opening, and I was able to attend some of those events. It was great to see some of that come back after COVID. Caught up with Boom, the new arts and community enterprise run by the Clunes Neighbourhood House. Participated in the Local Laws 2 reference group meeting for planting on nature strips and salvaging at the transfer station. I was particularly excited to see these groups up and running and to hear the input from the community about how we can create guidelines around planting on nature strips and salvaging at the tips. So we're one meeting in, 2 more sessions to go to bring those guidelines back for council's consideration. I was part of a cultural awareness training for our Aboriginal First Nations people, learning about the cycle of despair and how we can be part of a cycle of repair. I also attended a community information session here on the planning scheme amendment. It was great to be able to have a good number of the community, also council staff and councillors there, to clearly outline what that amendment process involved and where we go from here. And I think the community appreciated having their concerns heard, but also to hear about the direction council's taking with more work that we can do, that we've committed in the budget to do around strengthening our planning scheme to protect the valuable parts of our shire, such as our agricultural land, native environment, and look at social housing, the mix with tourism. There's a lot to unpack, but it was a great session and I think it was well appreciated by both staff and councillors and the community.
Thank you, Councillor Bray. Councillor Dryling.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I'd like to table my report and just make a few remarks. Past 30 days have been very busy for us. In particular, we've got a bit further down the track with our Hepburn Together project, with the 10-year council vision, 4-year council plan, and to embracing our commitment to better community engagement, and particularly through our community panel, the meeting of reference groups that Councillor Bray just mentioned with the salvaging transfer stations, curbside gardens and firewood collection. And we also had the planning scheme information session, which I attended. Also delivered a financially responsible budget that considers the impact of COVID and the size of our shire and available resources. And also noted the large government funds that have been the grants that we've received. More locally, I was involved with a couple of Anzac Day events through the services in Kingston and Creswick, and was fortunate enough to be invited to give an acknowledgement of country and to sing the national anthem with Creswick Brass Band. We've also seen the conclusion of community engagement events for Creswick Trails project in Creswick, and it's now progressed to a planning permit application. There have also been 2 major cycling events in Creswick over the past month, which has given our local community a bit of a taste of things to come, and some engagement to continue on that, I think, but overall it's been a very positive experience. There's been a lot of community activity and concern, as we've just mentioned, around the Western Victorian Transmission Lines project, particularly in our ward. And with our release of our statement tonight, I think you can see that we're continuing to advocate on behalf of our community and about the appropriate placement of power lines into the terminal base station location. I think tonight's motion strengthens that position and reinforces our desire to see the best outcome for our local community out of the EES process. Finally, I'd just like to note that the community engagement has begun on our 10-year Hepburn Shire aquatic strategy, and we want community feedback on our facilities, in particular how people use and enjoy facilities and ideas for improvements. I met with the District Aquatic Group, Centre Group, to discuss their campaign for an indoor heated pool, and I encourage community members to fill out the online survey or attend one of the community pop-up sessions on this topic.
Thank you, Councillor Dryelly. Councillor Holliday.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So firstly, I just wanted to say that I attended the 3 ceremonies in Clunes for Anzac Day, and it was really fantastic to see how many people turned out to each of the 3 events, and I was honoured to be able to speak at the 3rd. I attended Chatfest, or more well-known Spudfest in Trentham, and it was really fantastic. I would like to thank the organisers, and particularly the 2 locals who ran the bus tour. It was really fabulous. Booktown went across well, and I want to congratulate all the volunteers that worked very hard to make that happen. It was, I know how tricky it is to run an event in this COVID climate, and how much harder they had to work than usual, and they did an amazing job, and everyone who attended seemed to have a great time, so that's fantastic. The Clunes market is back up and running and going gangbusters. We're getting sort of 30 to 35 stalls each month now, and the crowds were great on Mother's Day, which is fantastic to see. In addition to those events, I've also been talking to Tristan and Bruce around trialling some bollards on the main street to try and make it safer for our elderly, disabled and so forth in crossing the street. So I'm really excited about that, and hopefully in the next couple of months they'll be coming back with some concepts to bring to the community. We had consultation around the Clunes Recreation master planning, and I was a little concerned that we weren't looking far enough into the future, and so the officers have been wonderful enough to, they're going to go away and find out how much it would cost to do the extra work. So we're looking at more of a 10-year vision so that we can actually get some better facilities in Clunes that we sorely need. So I look forward to being able to hopefully bring that back and maybe even slide it into the budget if we're lucky enough. And my final thing, I attended last week a MAV 1-hour course, or present workshop maybe is the correct term, on child safety in local government, which was really excellent. And I have lots of notes that I want to do some more work and come back and...
Seconds.
So, yeah, and I'm doing a little bit more other educational opportunities as well. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thanks, Councillor Halliday. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, it has been busy, as others have said, in the last month, and I Can't put all those highlights up, and many of them have been already mentioned by my colleagues. Madam Mayor, one of the great things I've been charged with by the Creswick Smeaton RSL is to present the council with this book, which I'll now do.
Thank you. I'll pass it on to Mr Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
This book called Reflections records the known history and service of the 979 Creswick Shire people who gave their lives in the 1914-18 war. These service people are honoured in the Shire of Creswick, Avenue of Honour at Kingston. The Shire contributed to this publication by way of a grant, and the compilation was done by volunteers. After many years of trying for funding on the Trentham Community Centre, to the tune of a grant was given to the tune of 3.5 million. That has to be one of the highlights, Madam Mayor, of my long service on council, to get something as difficult as this project. And it just shows what can happen when a community unites behind a project. Last week, our staff were put to the test when the night before a major cycling event took place at Hammond Park facilities at Creswick was broken into and badly damaged. Police were quickly on the scene and offenders taken into custody. After that, our assets and outdoor staff swung into action and worked all day until late. Most would not know the extent of the damage, so good was the clean-up. A special thanks to special people is well in order. Just a note, despite the juvenile and very offensive nature of scrawling, these were adults and not children. One has been released on bail and the other remanded in custody, which shows the serious nature of the alleged offences. The cycling events themselves were very well attended, with over 450 entrants at all levels, from small children to much older entrants. They were rank amateurs and world champions in the field. We even had a dog race. I did the acknowledgement of country on behalf of the Shire, and the events were described by all as absolutely fantastic. And they were all looking forward to the development of Hammond Park and the Creswick Trails, and were pleased to hear of the recent $2.1 million announcement for Hammond Park by the Andrews government. Attendance and funding announcement, and understand even more to come. Great credit to all involved, to the foresight of having shovel-ready projects that are diverse and allowing funding bodies to fund in the knowledge that the Shire is ready. Council has been developing this strategy over a number of years and allocating matching funds in successive budgets with hard work of staff to ensure pricing and planning is done as a team effort. I also cannot get past the work going on in the community regarding imposition of major transmission network in our Shire. This is not just a power line passing through the construction of it, but the construction of a terminal station will taking feed from other areas, as well as potential establishment of small microgrids that will potentially see our hills and volcanic cones dotted with solar farms. Just finishing, Madam Mayor. It took time to present the book. The other important work is the group set up to look at recycling, roadside planning and firewood collection. I attended the firewood group and must say that there was a positive will to find a safe and effective way of ensuring the wood can be collected without damage to the environment, and those collecting were safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. And on behalf of the Shire, thank you for the presentation of the book, which will be a valuable addition to our resources in the history of the Shire. Councillor Hood.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The past month has indeed been a busy and eventful period. At the risk of being a little repetitive, I do want to make 3 points. In one of the more important decisions councillors must embrace, we appointed Bradley Thomas as Council Chief Executive. With the requisite skills and experience, well regarded within the local government sector, and a solid track record in the past 6 months as Interim Chief Executive, I believe that Council's administration is in good hands. I congratulate Bradley and look forward to working with him for the benefit of the Hepburn Shire community in the coming years. Secondly, I too had the honour of representing council at Anzac Day ceremonies in both Trentham and Bellato. Despite proceedings being curtailed due to COVID, both events were well attended and appropriately marked this important day. Thirdly, in a clear demonstration of council's strong relationship with funding bodies and the state government, it was extremely pleasing to learn of successful funding bids for the construction of the Trentham Community Centre, the Trentham Sports Ground renovation and the Bellato Rail project. The grants total $6.1 million and will be a tremendous boost for Colaban Ward. The Bellato project will restore the station buildings to how they were in the 1930s, create a rail museum and will represent a huge boost to tourism. The renovation of the Trentham Sports Ground is much needed and will provide contemporary facilities for male and female footballers, netballers, cricketers, and those engaging in other passive recreational activities. Such facilities are so important to health and well-being. The creation of a community centre in Trentham is long awaited and also much needed. Honouring the past, the historic Mechanics Hall will be fully renovated and will house an expanded library, through to the origins of Mechanics Institutes as learning centres and their role as a precursor to modern libraries. The community function space and meeting rooms will cater for a fast-growing community and will bring Trentham and Colaban Ward up to par with facilities already enjoyed across the Shire. Significantly, well over 500 engagements were made with community members in the past few weeks as the revised plans were discussed and reviewed. The community's feedback from the 2020 survey was incorporated into the revised plans, and there is no doubt that the community's strong backing of the revised plans has assisted greatly in securing funding and enabling this critical project to proceed. I'd suggest this is a great example of this council's commitment to community engagement. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Hood. Do we have a recommendation that council receives and notes the mayor's and council's reports? I'm in search of a motion. Do I have a mover, Councillor Henderson, and a seconder, Councillor Simpson? I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. Councillor Henderson, Councillor Dryly, Councillor Bray, Councillor Hood, Councillor Simpson and Councillor Halliday and myself, Councillor Hewitt. The motion is carried. Item 9.3, the Chief Executive Officer's report. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I must say the last month has probably been arguably one of the most rewarding personally and professionally, and thank you for councillors' kind words today and their appointment of myself as the Chief Executive Officer. Very much looking forward to hitting the ground working with both community and councillors in developing particularly the Hepburn Together project and the development of our community vision and council plan. Importantly, I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank the staff who've been incredible support over the last 5 months while in the interim role, and really looking forward to working with them as we develop for our community. Been a number of highlights touched on by councillors this afternoon, and I won't profess to go over them in too much detail. Particularly also would like to mention the launch of our Hepburn Life, our new monthly e-newsletter. Fantastic, I think, recognition that this council is listening to the community. We undertook a detailed community engagement policy and heard that overwhelmingly 74% of our community wanted to get their updates via a regular e-newsletter, and for the last month we now did that, so make sure the community signs up to that e-newsletter. Can I say a massive thank you to all partners, staff, councillors, state government. The funding announcements over the last month and particularly in the last sort of fortnight have been truly remarkable. These are absolutely game-changing projects for our community. Funding of $7, $8, $9 million is unheard of for a small rural council. It goes to show you when we work together in a partnership what can be delivered. So now the challenge is on officers to deliver these worthwhile and really important projects, and I can assure councillors in the community will be working very quickly to get these shovel-ready projects onto the ground as quickly as possible. Councillors, there's a recommendation on page 8 that council receives and notes the Chief Executive Officer's report for May 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Are there any questions of Mr. Thomas on his report? No, then I'm inserting a motion that council receives and notes the Chief Executive Officer's report for May 2021. Do I have a mover? Councillor Simpson, and a seconder, Councillor Bray. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Halliday, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Hood, Councillor Bray, Councillor Dryeley, Councillor Henderson, and myself, Councillor Hewitt. I declare the motion carried. Item 10 on the agenda is public participation time. We now move to that at 10.1. There were no petitions received. 10.2 questions. We will now hear from those who've submitted public questions. I understand that both Mr. David Moore and Ms. Helen Hayes are here, and so I invite Mr. David Moore to ask his question. Mr. Moore? If you go to the lectern, please. Assist.
On behalf of the POW, Protect Our Water, Musk Water Group, I'll ask the first question and Helen will ask the second one. This question is, Council has many opportunities to prepare this Shire for a water sustainable future. How are the current planning amendments being used as an opportunity to strengthen the protection of mineral spring and aquifer resources? Will Council lobby state and federal governments to amend the Water Act to stop water mining? This act is the principal cause of our frustration. This is occurring at Wheelers Hill, Musk and other sites in the Shire. It entitles the landowner to take water freely from the aquifers at minimal cost. So each tank is worth about 5 cents in cost. Normally this water is for agricultural use, but they are trucking it out of the catchment for bottling in plastic single-use bottles and for a huge profit.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Council's response. Council is currently preparing an integrated water management strategy alongside Central Highlands Water for the towns of Clunes, Creswick and Daylesford. This strategy considers all water values, including water catchment, stormwater drainage and infrastructure, potable water, domestic wastewater and alternative water sources. We will be implementing this over the next 12 months with our intention to expand this work to Trentham and Glenlyon after that. In addition, Council has recently confirmed a commitment to the ongoing protection of the mineral springs through a detailed assessment as part of our future strategic planning program. They are also being considered through the integrated water management strategy, and Council will continue to advocate and seek funding to further this work to protect our precious water resources. Thank you. Ms. Helen Hayes? Thank you.
I think part of this discussion has covered some of the things that we were asking, but I do want to reiterate that as Councillor Henderson said, this is a very special area and it's very dependent on its water for the community. As he said, for agriculture, very much so, but also as a tourist destination as well. However, the question I want to ask is, how will the Hepburn Shire Council take a more active role in assessing and monitoring the numbers and size of the water tankers, the BWs that carry 38,000 litres, a bit more actually, and larger, coming and leaving from the Wheelers Hill site, recording data logging of the volume of truck movement, and also including the monitoring and policing of the noise, particularly during and after curfew, which was established by VCAT some time ago. So the period between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. ensuring that the council ensures that the noise is kept to a minimum. So that's the question that I wanted to ask.
Thank you, Ms Hayes. In late 2019, the Chief Executive Officer and the Director of Infrastructure and Development Services met with Blackmount Springwater to discuss ongoing concerns about water extraction, and particularly around compliance with planning permit conditions and truck agreement curfews. Agreement was reached with the Director and the Chief Operations Officer around monitoring of curfews and a commitment around self-reporting of known breaches to Council. Vehicle GPS tracking is also available upon request. Council has in the past undertaken surveillance of truck movements outside of the permit conditions and has legal advice regarding this. Council is of the understanding that compliance with the permit conditions is now being achieved. Council, I want to assure you that Council welcomes any specific details from concerned residents about any non-compliant vehicle movements, and we'll follow that up. I'd like to just thank Kate McRae, Helen Hayes and David Moore for their questions. It's an important part of community council accountability back to the community to have residents submit questions. So thank you for that. 9.3, request to address council. We have one request to address council that had been received by the deadline. So I now invite Mr. David Stagg to address council regarding the naming of an unnamed road in Trentham. Mr. Stagg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and councillors, for allowing me to speak. For those of you who don't know me, I've been practising as a solicitor for something like 48 years. Sensibly, I retired at Christmas. Practising certificate doesn't expire until the 30th of June. I'll try to keep this short and not bore you with too much legal jargon. The lane in question that I wish to name in Trentham is approximately 50 metres long, coming off Market Street. It ends at the rear of my properties at 39 and 41 High Street, Trentham. It is not a thoroughfare. Its legal status is unclear to me. According to the plan of subdivision I have here, the lane is actually a set apart for easements of way and or drainage for the benefit of the 3 lots created by the original plan of subdivision in 1953, of which I own 2. Its current ownership is also unclear. This is most relevant in relation to whether the Geographical Victoria guidelines apply at all, which I will come to in a minute. From my experience as a solicitor, my guess is that after the subdivision, it probably remains in private ownership, held in the name of a long forgotten deceased estate of the person who did the subdivision. I haven't had time to check, but that's what usually happened. The lane has remained unnamed and unmaintained since it was created. As the shop at 39 High Street was built where the lane terminates in 1904, that was probably more than a century ago. The council planning officers have sought to ensure that this neglect would continue by inserting clause 13 into the planning permit I was granted for the development, which states it is the responsibility of the permit holder to maintain the unmaintained lane to the satisfaction of the responsibility. It will maintain it in an unmaintained state. I'm not exactly sure how I'm supposed to deal with that. Now that brings me to the Geographical Names Victoria guideline, which council seeks to rely on to require the lane to be named in line with its alleged but quite unproven, at least to me, historical significance. The guidelines ramble on for a full 110 pages without making it clear to me with any degree of legal certainty how they apply in this situation. Whoever drafted them was certainly not a lawyer. It is not clear to me whether the guidelines apply at all because the definitions are so vague, but it is clear that they are not mandatory in the naming of private lanes, which is probably the case here. The only part of the guidelines that are clear are the time guidelines. Let me quote from clause 1.9. If a proposed naming, renaming or boundary change is considered to be small scale and only affects a limited number of residents, ratepayers and businesses, the process may be shorter than those described below. And then we have proposal, renamed road, proposal initiation, 1 to 2 weeks, consultation 30 to 90 days, checks, compliance checks and reporting 30 to 60 days, OGN audit, gazette and notification 30 to 60 days. The maximum recommended time for the process is therefore around 6 months. Since I first applied in writing to name the lane on the 26th of February 2019, and I've got a copy of the application here, more than 3 years have elapsed, 6 times the amount of time set out in the guidelines. As a result of this delay, I've been put to a significant disadvantage. In my submission, it is quite inappropriate for the council to seek to apply part of the guidelines and not others. The broader issue, I'm very sensitive.
30 seconds, Mr.
Sorry?
30 seconds?
30 seconds. Okay. As an alternative to naming it Dairy Lane, I propose to put a historical marker, and I'm working with the Historical Society in Trentham to find the details of this dairy, if it in fact existed. I'm happy at my expense to have a marker prepared and placed in an appropriate place. The reason I want to name it Anthony's Mews is after my son, who was tragically killed at the age of 14. I promised myself and his surviving twin brother, Rowan, that I would dedicate the development I did to his deceased brother, and I respectfully request that the council grants my application.
Thank you, Mr. Stagg. And again, I can say that we appreciate members of the public coming and putting their point of view to councillors as we make what are significant decisions for people. Item 11.1, Hepburn Hub at the update. I'd like to introduce Mr. Bruce Lucas, who's the Director of Infrastructure and Development, to introduce the report.
Madam Mayor, the purpose of this report is to provide councillors with a project update against the project plan that has previously been endorsed by council. Councillors, in summary, the project scope includes, and I think we all know this, includes a library, a community auditorium, a co-working space, customer service area and council offices. I don't think I need to say, I will say, it's a very complex project. It has a lengthy history and the contracted works have not progressed as we had expected or intended them to do so. The project scope, councillors, remains at a little over 2,000 square metres, 2,052 square metres to be exact. However, there are some technical upgrades that have been identified post awarding of the contract that will impact, I anticipate, on the identified and contract scope, and there is a result of further defects identified post award of the contract. The expenditure budget remains at $7.13 million. However, the additional defects that I refer to under the project scope are likely to have an impact on that budget. The budget does contain a contingency of a little over $200,000 that will go towards the additional costs that are expected, and council continues to negotiate these with the contractor. In terms of the project program, the works are scheduled to be undertaken over a 107-day program. The builder has not yet commenced works on site, although council will notice to commence works. Given that the works haven't yet commenced on site, it is unlikely that the date of practical completion in June, July will be achieved, and therefore there is a significant risk to the current scheduled contract completion date. At the moment, we would forecast it pushing out from that June-July period to mid-October. That is dependent on when the contractor commences. Councillors, within the body of the report, there are a number of specific items that are listed in terms of the additional works that council officers continue to negotiate with the contractor on. We have legal advice on a range of fronts in regards to these negotiations, and we also have strong support from council's quantity suppliers guiding us through those works. Councillors, there is a recommendation in 6 parts on page 11 of the agenda papers. I won't read through all 6 components, but as I say, there are 6 components and I'm happy to take any questions.
Do any councillors have any questions of Mr Lucas on this report? Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for that report, Mr Lucas. It's obviously been a very frustrating process. I think not just for the team that's working, but also obviously the community and councillors as well are feeling that frustration. And I suppose the question is at this point in the process, at what point does the council draw a line in the sand and say enough's enough? So I guess my question is, given the frustrations of the community, councillors and staff with the delays at the start of the build of the REX project, has the project team considered the option to terminate the contract with the current builder and to look at other options?
Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor. The short answer is yes, there are a number of options that are available to council within the contract and obviously options available to the contractor as well. Officers are continuing to look at all of the options. There are no firm decisions made. We are continuing to work with the contractor around negotiating a solution. Obviously, that needs to be suitable for council to deliver the project within the framework that we intended, or as difficult as that may be to achieve, that is what we are targeting and trying or endeavouring to do. There is provision to terminate the contract. There may be risks associated with that, and council needs to fully understand what those risks are, and that is why we are regularly in contact with our legal support team to guide us through these negotiations.
Thank you, Mr Lucas. Are there any further questions of Mr Lucas on the report? No. We have an officer's recommendation which I'll read out, that Council 1 receives and notes the May 2021 project update report regarding the Hepburn Hub at the REX project. 2, notes the decision by the builder not to commence works on site. 3, notes the date for practical completion is likely to be delayed a minimum of 4 months. 4, notes some additional costs are likely to be associated with the delays, further investigations to respond to the builder's queries, and additional works to the existing building fabric not included in the original scope. This shall be balanced to the extent possible against further value management savings. 5, notes that monthly reporting to council and the community will continue. 6, receives a detailed briefing from officers on the current status and implications of the contract negotiations at the next available opportunity. I'm in search of a motion. Do I have a mover and a seconder?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move the first 5 officer recommendations, but with a replacement number 6.
Yes, could you read that out?
Yeah, instead of the current number 6, is that we conduct a councillor workshop prior to the June 2021 council meeting to examine all available options relating to the Hepburn Hub at the REX project. To enable responsible and evidence-based decision-making, council requests officers to obtain further legal advice and provide details of the consequences and implications, financial, non-financial and operational, relating to each option. Having considered all relevant information following the workshop and the June council meeting, council will appropriately communicate with the community.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. Do I have a seconder for Councillor Henderson? Second motion. So it's the same as in the agenda papers and that I've read out with point 6 changed. Councillor Hood, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, Madam Mayor, yes, thank you. It's clear to all of us that we find ourselves in a position that we would prefer not to be in. This council has inherited a project, not of its doing, that is highly problematic. We are reaching a decision-making point, if we haven't already reached it. But in order for this council to make proper evidence-based decisions, we need to have all the options and all the available information, financial and non-financial, in front of us. I'm suggesting that we do that in the next month, ahead of the council meeting in June, so that we can examine all options with the current builder to finish the project and to also examine what we do with the asset.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. Councillor Henderson, do you wish to?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be brief as well. Just to say, Madam Mayor, there's probably more questions than answers. I could have asked Mr Lucas, but we know the answers to those, so it's no point in getting up here grandstanding about it. This project not only been a frustration to this council, it's been a frustration for me personally over a long period of time. One of the good things now is that we are getting some transparency. We're being supplied information in this council that we never ever were able to get in the previous council. So to that extent, it's good. We're last getting some honesty and as I said, some transparency. So I'm very interested to know what is available to us, both in the ongoing sense. We do have to look after our staff. We also have to look after our ratepayers' money, and that's some of mine as well, and all of us are ratepayers here. So we've got a vested interest in doing that. It isn't a bottomless pit, and we have to make some very, very evidence-based, as my colleague says, decisions, and that can't be just done on the hop. We have to run every rabbit down the burrow. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would also like to support this motion, and I'm very keen to see what all of our options are, even so far as to selling the building as is versus keeping going with it how we are, what are our options if we do disband this project. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that, so we can weigh up everything with a clear head and we know that we are making the right decisions. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Does any other councillor wish to speak against the motion? In which case I'll put the motion to the vote. I won't read it out again. It's as written with the change to point 6 as described or read out by Councillor Hood. Ms. Ford.
Available online.
And it's available online and up there. Good. Thank you, Mr Thomas. So all those in favour of the motion as demonstrated, Councillor Halliday, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Dryelly, Councillor Bray, Councillor Hood and myself, Councillor Hewitt. So I declare the motion carried. Thank you. Item 11.2 on the agenda is the naming of an unnamed road in Trentham. We've heard Mr Stagg speak about. Mr Burgess, are you going to introduce the report?
Through you, Madam Mayor, thank you. And I certainly note Mr Stagg's submission and the delays that he referred to. And I can tell councillors that once I became aware of those delays, I wrote to Mr Stagg to apologise to him for that occurring, and also gave an undertaking to make sure that we brought this matter to council. Councillors, council received a request from Mr Stagg, a ratepayer, to name an unnamed lane in Trentham, Anthony's Mews, and the following process was undertaken. Council proposed to name an unnamed lane in Trentham, Anthony's Mews. Advertisements were placed in the Midland Express and the Local. An email was sent to the Zsa Zsa Wurrung with the proposed name of the lane, and submissions were called for from interested parties, including adjacent lane owners, to either agree with the proposal or suggest an alternative. Submissions closed on the 8th of October in 2020, and the name proposed, Anthony's Muse, was not supported by the majority of respondents. Council received numerous alternatives for the lane name. Councillors, geographic names Victoria guidelines require the name to have either a historical link, relate to a geographical or topographical feature, or be locally named. Upon closing of the submissions, Council received 7 submissions from surrounding residents. In summary, councillors, residents objected to the name Anthony's Muse, feeling that it didn't have any historical or community significance for Trentham. A total of 3 submissions suggested the name Dairy Lane or Old Dairy Lane. This name would preserve the history as well as the living memories of residents of the dairy that was located on the south side of the lane. In relation to community engagement was undertaken for this particular laneway, community engagement practices utilised included advertising in the local newspapers, signage at the unnamed lane itself seeking feedback on the proposed name. They remained open for a period of 4 weeks, provided for submissions. And as I said, that we received 7 submissions during that time. And all those who put a submission in were notified by email of the proposed name that will be recommended to council. All but one respondent were happy with the proposal, and that person has written to council to lodge an objection. The person who was not happy, Mr. Stagg, has written to council to lodge an objection, of course. Councillors, the recommendation of officers is that council adopts the name Dairy Lane for the unnamed lane off Market Street in Trentham, lodges the naming proposal with the Office of Geographic Names seeking endorsement and registration of the name, and following registration, notifies the relevant local organisations and stakeholders of the new road name. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Do I have any questions of Mr. Burgess? So I'm in search of a motion. Do I have a mover and a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that we defer the decision on this unnamed lane until we have had done some further investigation and community consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Bray. Do I have a seconder for Councillor Bray's motion? Councillor Hood. Councillor Bray, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I just feel that we've heard tonight there's some concerns around the process, and I feel that this needs a little bit more consideration and perhaps a bit more community involvement. I think there was a very small number of community members actually gave input into this decision. So,
thanks, Councillor Bray. Councillor Hood.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I endorse Councillor Bray's comments. I would feel far more comfortable having undertaken a bit more work on this particular item, including some more community engagement.
Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Simpson?
Yes, I sympathise with David and his situation, but this is a public laneway. The legal process has been followed to name the laneway. I personally would love to see the lane named after Mr. Stagg's son, but unfortunately, because it's a public road, I feel that the public need to be listened to in this situation, and I think there's been six people who for this laneway to be called Dairy Lane. There's one person who wants it called Anthony's Mews. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Simpson. Does anyone else want to speak against the motion? Councillor Bray, you have the right of reply. Then I'll put those in favour of the motion, raise their hand. Councillor Henderson, Councillor Wiley, Councillor Bray, Councillor Hood, Councillor Halliday. Those against? Councillor Hewitt, Councillor Simpson. Thank you. The vote's carried. Motion's carried as written by Councillor Bray. 11.2, the naming of an unnamed road in Newland North. Mr Burgess.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Council has received a request to name a currently unnamed lane in Newland North, and the following process was undertaken. Council proposed the name Volcanic Hills Road. Advertisements were placed in the Midlands Express and the Local. An email was sent to the Zhao Zhaorong with the proposed name of the lane. Submissions were called for from interested persons, including adjacent landowners, to either agree with the proposal or suggest an alternative. Submissions closed on the 8th of October 2020. The proposed name Volcanic Hills Road wasn't accepted by the community, and council received numerous alternatives for the road. Again, under Geographic Names Victoria guidelines, require the name to have either a historical link, relate to a geographical or topographical feature, or be locally known. Upon closing a submission, council had received 8 submissions from surrounding residents. In summary, residents in Newland North were very keen for the road to receive a name that reflects the way roads in the area have been named in the past and to reflect the history of the Newland North area. A total of 4 residents have suggested either Stevens Road or Stevens Lane. This is the only name that's submitted this is the only name submitted that has more than one submission. The Stevens family live on the road and pay to develop the road. They have built 3 residences on this road and run an agricultural business in the area. Community engagement undertaken in relation to this name included advertising in the local newspapers and signage that was erected at the unnamed road seeking feedback on the proposed name. Once again, 4 weeks were provided to allow for the submissions to receive, and the report details those submissions in further detail. All those who made a submission were emailed and advised of the name that would be recommended to council, being Stevens Road. Responses received back were all in favour of the proposal. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is that council adopts the name Stevens Road for the unnamed road in Newland North, lodges the naming proposal with the Office of Geographic Names seeking endorsement and registration of the name, and following registration notifies relevant and local organisations and stakeholders of the new road name. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Burgess. Are there any questions of Mr Burgess on this? Councillor Hicks.
Yes, Mr Burgess, I noted in your report you said that the people were not accepting of the Volcanic Hills Road. That, of course, take it, was the people in the area, not the state government who were responsible for, DELP, who were responsible for approving the naming of roads.
For clarity, through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct. It was not the state government.
Thank you. Any further questions of Mr Burgess? So I'm in search of a motion.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'm prepared to move a motion.
Yes. Councillor.
Madam Mayor, I wish to defer this, move to defer this item as well, so we can undertake better consultation and take that a little bit wider. I have a fair knowledge of this area, and so I move that we defer it.
Do I have a seconder for Councillor Henderson's motion? Councillor Halliday. So we have a motion that that the naming of this unnamed road in Newland North be deferred for further consultation, community consultation. Councillor Henderson, you wish to speak to the motion?
Madam Mayor, Madam Mayor, sometimes it's not what we do, it's what we perceive to be doing. And we have a policy about the naming of roads. Now, to any person who is driving past or has little knowledge of the history of this area, it may seem that Stevens Road's pretty good. But when you look at the guidelines, Stevenses still live there. They are also the developers of this particular development, and two of them live on the road. And people could be construing that we're naming it after living people. And around this particular area, quite frankly, I'm getting a little bit annoyed about the names. We've got a G. May Road, an R. Charlson Road. We've got all these names of roads that seem to come from nowhere, and people are always questioning how come this person's got a road named after them, and you really can't tell them. There are, over a period of time, and I dare say it's been missed, but there are people who would have a better claim to the naming of that road than even the Stevenses have been in the area, their family, for a long time. Perception will be that we're not naming it after those people, we're naming it after the current people. And I think needs a bit more consultation and research, and certainly these notes here, for anyone reading the minutes, there's nothing about the historic link, Stevens family, to that particular area at all. So I think the perception is very important here. It's a small issue. We're dealing with millions of dollars and we're arguing over a naming of a road, but small things are sometimes important to communities. And so I think we ought to undertake that.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Halliday, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Does anyone else want to speak to the motion? I want to speak, another councillor want to speak against the motion? In which case, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour of deferring the decision on the unnamed road in Newland? Councillor Henderson, Dryly, Bray, Hood, Simpson, Halliday, and myself, Councillor Hewitt. The motion is carried. Moving to item 11.5, Mr Burgess, this is the minutes of the Community Assets Committee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a procedural report. The purpose of this report is for council to receive and note the minutes from council's community asset committees. Councillors, community asset committees are established by council under section 65 of the Local Government Act 2020, and communities are required to maintain minutes of meetings held and provide a copy of those minutes to council. Councillors, I again note these minutes have been provided confidentially to council. The recommendation is that council receives and notes the minutes of community asset committees which have been distributed to councillors, those minutes being the Glen Lyon Recreation Reserve Community Asset Committee meeting 3 March of 2021 and the Lee Medland Home of Bottles Community Asset Committee 19 of April 2021. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Burgess. Are there any questions of Mr Burgess about those minutes? Then as a procedural motion, I'm looking for a motion for the officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover? Councillor Simpson, seconder. Councillor Halliday. I'll take it that everyone's read the minutes. Councillor Simpson, do you want to make any comment?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Halliday, any other councillor want to speak to the motion? Against? Then I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Halliday, Simpson, Henderson, Bray, Dryly, Councillor Hood and myself, Councillor Hewitt. Apologies for that, Councillor Bray. I put your name in with Councillor Dryly. The motion's carried unanimously. Item 12.1, Gender Equity Advisory Committee. Mr Burgess, again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Another important report that this council has brought through. So at the ordinary meeting of council on 16th of February this year, council moved to establish a Gender Equity Advisory Committee. At that meeting, a draft terms of reference were presented and feedback was received from councillors. The purpose of this report, council, is for councillors to consider endorsement of those updated terms of reference which are attached. Councillors, the aim of the Gender Equity Advisory Committee is to provide council with advice on improving gender equity within the Hepburn Shire Council and community. The Gender Equity Advisory Committee is an advisory committee and not a decision-making body, and will make recommendations to council on matters for determination. The objectives of the committee are to advocate for gender equity within the Hepburn community and beyond, provide feedback and advice to council on gender equity implications of its policies, plans and services, and contribute to the promotion of council and community collaborations that support and promote gender equity. Membership will comprise of a councillor as the chair and up to 10 community members who are committed to working positively to meet the objectives of the committee. The committee will operate with a minimum of 4 members. Under the terms of appointment, councillors, appointments will be for a minimum of 4-year term, and council will appoint a councillor to chair those meetings. Members who complete their 4-year term may reapply for a further 4-year term. In relation to stakeholder engagement, councillors, in particular for this particular committee, a communications plan has been developed, will be implemented to ensure a wide advertising of membership to and for this committee is undertaken throughout the Shire. That will include advertising on council's websites and digital platforms, emailing and targeted contacts within relevant groups within our community. Councillors, the recommendation that goes with this report is that council endorse the terms of reference for the Gender Equity Advisory Committee. Note that upon endorsement of the terms of reference, expressions of interest will be advertised for the Gender Equity Advisory Committee between the 19th of May, tomorrow, councillors, and the 16th of June 2021. And note that a report will be presented at the July ordinary meeting of council for council to consider appointment of those members. And importantly, councillors, number 4, note that the Heather Mutimer Honour Roll will be retained as a separate event administered by council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mr Burgess, are there any comments? Councillor Hood.
If I may, Mr Burgess, my question would be relevant for every advisory committee that council has, not just this one. And I do note that the advisory committee table its minutes at the next available council meeting. But in the terms of reference, there actually is no obligation of the committee to present a report to council, simply to provide the minutes of its meeting. Has some thought perhaps been given to obligating any advisory committee to provide a report with its recommendations and findings to council?
Through you, Madam Mayor, and I will hand over to the Chief Executive who wants to have a say on this, I'd suggest.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Mr Burgess. Thank you for that question, Councillor. It's actually a really good point. And as you noted, the minutes of the advisory committees do come to council, and at this stage, that's how the advisory committees do report to council. What we're about to undertake in the coming months is a bit of a review from a governance point of view into our advisory committees. We want to streamline the terms of references, how the committees are set up, and as part of that, I'd really like to look at incorporating some sort of regular reporting back to council, not making it onerous for both the committee members and officers, but just to probably an annual snapshot or something similar that could come back. So officers are more than happy to take that on as part of that review.
Thank you, Mr Thomas. Other questions of Mr Burgess or Mr Thomas? Any other comments? In which case, I'm in search of a motion. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Hood, seconded Councillor Halliday. Do either of you, do you want to speak to the motion, Councillor Hood?
No, I'm fine with it, and I accept the Chief Executive's explanation. I think advisory committee providing minutes is one thing, and that's good and transparent, but in actually being a bit more proactive and showing some initiative and making recommendations to council, I think goes a good step further. So I'm pleased to hear intended plans.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to quickly say that this is a really important committee to hopefully move towards gender equity alongside other regulations that are coming through from an internal point of view. So I really hope that we get some people on board that are excited to help, I guess, further the cause of gender equity in our not only in council but in our communities as a whole. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what they can do. Thank you.
Thanks, councillor Halliday. Does anyone else want to speak to the motion? Anyone want to speak against the motion? Case, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour of the officer's recommendation as read: Councillor Henderson, Councillor Dryley, Councillor Bray, Councillor Hood, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Halliday and myself, Councillor Hewitt. And I will just note that, noting that the motion is carried unanimously, point out that whilst Australia is #1 in terms of girls' education, we dropped to number 43 in terms of participation in public life and workforce. And so there is much work to be done. So I'd endorse Councillor Halliday's comments. If we move on to item 13.1, declaration of special rates charge, solar savers scheme. Is this?
Yeah,
Councillor Dryley, note that Councillor Dryley is leaving meeting due to the previously declared of interest. And I will call again on Mr. Burgess to introduce the report. No, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of the report is for council to consider declaring a special charge scheme under the Local Government Act for the purpose of paying expenses relating to the installation of solar energy systems on residential properties that are participating in the Solar Savers scheme. Council have included $125,000 of funding in the current financial year, being 2021 budget. And on the 16th of March 21, Council resolved to give notice of its intention to declare the special charge scheme for the purposes as I've referenced. Following that declaration, or the resolving Council's intent, notice was given and Council invited submissions in relation to that special charge scheme. Councillors, there were no submissions and no objections received, and no households have made any requests to withdraw from the scheme due to changed circumstances. So that being the case, under section 163 of the Local Government Act, Council is empowered to declare a special charge scheme should it wish to do so, for the purposes of installation of a solar energy systems on properties as part of the Solar Savers scheme. Councillors, this is a really good news story, and sorry to be so mechanical, I guess, in its delivery, but this impacts and supports 22 properties, ratepayers across our municipality, for them to tap into a renewable energy source that perhaps otherwise they may not have had the opportunity to access. It is effectively a loan scheme that Council provides at no interest and enables ratepayers to pay down that over an 8-year period, utilising the savings that they can achieve through the Solar Savers, or the solar installation. Councillors, there is a long-winded recommendation. It's over 12 parts and over 2.5 pages for Council to declare such a special charge scheme to then implement that for the 22 property owners. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr Lucas, questions of Mr Lucas? Yes, there are. Ms Councillor Henderson.
It's through you, Madam Mayor. Through you, Madam Mayor. Mr Lucas, I notice down on page 76, we've got the specifications of these items that are supplied. And first question is, do people have a choice, or are they obliged to take what's given? So that is the Ryzen RSM 72-6 panels and the inverter, few choices there. Are they obliged to accept that? Can they opt for different panels and an inverter?
Through you, Madam Mayor, my understanding, councillor, is that the property owners negotiate the system that they would like to have installed with the provider, in this case being Macedon Ranges Solar Power, who have been awarded the contract. There is a negotiation between the property owner and the provider.
Perhaps the reason I ask Mr Lucas is that these panels and inverters are described as entry level. And probably, so some of them are, the panels at least, are at the bottom end of what is really from, if you start from number 1 to number 10, they start at number 1. And I'm just wondering about the good sense in doing that. Anyway, you've answered the question. Thank you.
Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr Lucas, on delivering this report. It is a great story to be able to offer this sort of loan for members of our community who are perhaps vulnerable and need to be able to upgrade to some solar. My quick question is, in the motion, it says that the total cost of performing the function described is $103,242.55. I assume that is the total cost of the total program for this year's Solar Savers program. How will the individual owners' special charge be calculated over that 8-year period? How does that?
Thank you, councillor. There is a detailed formula specified in the Local Government Act, which details how the annual repayment amount is quantified, and it is determined based on the amount of benefit that the property owner obtains. In this case, each of the 22 property owners have agreed to pay back the loan amount, if you like, over an 8-year period, and it would be equally apportioned over the 8 years.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions of Mr Lucas? So I'm not going to read out the 12-point motion that goes over 3 pages. I'll assume that my fellow councillors have done their due diligence and read it. Can I have I'm in search of a motion. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved Councillor Bray, seconded Councillor Henderson. Do either of you, Councillor Bray, do you want to speak to the motion? Councillor Henderson?
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor. Thank you. And just briefly, Madam Mayor, this gives an opportunity to those people who normally wouldn't be able to afford, and I think that's something that we need to take into account when we're dealing with the public. It's all very well to be nice and green and lean and all those things, but some people are leaner than they are greener, and they need some assistance. And I think that we need to take that into account, and we have done, and I think it's a good spend. We will get the money back over a period of time, and I do understand that some of the payments will be tied to the savings that they make on their power as well, so that they'll be saving on their paying for this by saving on their electricity bill. So it's a great initiative by the council, and I commend it to my colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Does any other councillor want to speak in favour of the motion? Does any councillor want to speak against the motion? In which case I'll put the motion. All those in favour, raise your hand. Councillor Halliday, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Bray, Councillor Wood, and myself, councillor Hewitt, and I note that the motion is carried. Thank you, councillors and Mr Lucas. I'm in search of a motion to suspend standing orders for 5 minutes. Yeah.
Madam Mayor.
Councillor Dryley's return, the motion around solar savers was, but I'm now in search of a motion to suspend standing orders for 5 minutes. Councillor Hood, you're moving that?
Yes.
I have a seconder, councillor Henderson. All those in favour, raise their hand. Councillor Henderson, councillor Dryley, councillor Bray, councillor Hood, councillor Hewitt, councillor Simpson, councillor Halliday. For those watching on live streaming, the meeting will now be, standing orders will be suspended for 5 minutes and then we'll resume in 5 minutes' time.
7:42.
At 7:42. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. White. We're back now and I need a motion to resume standing orders.
So moved.
Moved Councillor Henderson, seconded Councillor Halliday. All those in favour? Councillor Halliday, Simpson, Henderson, Dryley, Wood and myself, Councillor Hewitt. So we resume at item 14.1, policy, revenue collection and financial hardship policy. Mr. Burgess, can you introduce this report, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The existing revenue collection and hardship policy, which was adopted by Council on 15 September 2015, has been reviewed, and a new version of the Revenue Collection and Financial Hardship Policy 21 has been developed. The Local Government Act 2020 states that one of the principles of good governance is for council to ensure its ongoing financial viability. To do this, the Act defines several financial management principles, including revenue, must be managed in accordance with a council's financial policies. Revenue Collection and Financial Hardship Policy 2021 puts this financial management principle into operational practice. It is an important document in the wider local government financial framework. Council, this policy is an administrative policy and it provides council officers with clear directions to ensure the policy objectives are achieved. It describes how rates and fees will be collected and how council may assist persons who are unable to pay rates and fees because they are experiencing financial hardship. And obviously, this is very important to council. The 2021 version of the policy does not change the principles on which the 2015 policy was based. However, it builds upon that foundation by adding important details to the introduction as well as existing sections concerned with the fees, the rates and financial hardship. The 2021 version also includes completely new sections concerned with objectives, definitions, payment plans, roles and responsibilities. Councillors, I will draw your attention to section 8, which deals with financial hardship. And I'll also note that the Victorian Ombudsman's report into financial hardship was released this week, and that in the provision and the drafting of this document, we were aware that that report was being undertaken, and I can assure councillors that the policy that has been prepared has taken into account a number of the recommendations and the practices that were included in that report. And importantly, councillors, in relation to financial hardship, we are dealing with people as council, our community, and this policy clearly articulates the ways that we can support our community and that we can provide ways for them to be able to meet their debt and under the policy and in a way that's very much humanistic in its development. Councillors, in relation to community engagement in particular, as this is a procedural policy, there's no additional community engagement that is required. However, the policy will be uploaded onto the council website so that our community is aware what is available to them. I have a recommendation for councillors to consider, and that is that council rescinds the revenue collection and hardship policy adopted on the 15th of September 2015 and adopts the revenue collection and financial hardship policy 2021. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Are there any questions of Mr. Burgess on this? Then I'm in search of a motion. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Hood, seconded Councillor Halliday. Councillor Hood, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, Madam Mayor, as Mr. Burgess very correctly points out, any organisation must survive and thrive on its cash flow. But at the same time, this policy, I believe, strikes the right balance in that it's equitable, treats all customers, residents, ratepayers fairly, and it differentiates between the can't pays and the won't pays, and that we extend appropriate hardship arrangements to those who find it difficult to pay. So there's good flexibility there. So I believe that this policy strikes the right balance and is the right way to manage our cash flows.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. Councillor Halliday. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Any councillor wish to speak against the motion? And I'll put the motion. All those in favour, raise their hand. Councillor Halliday, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Hood, Councillor Bray, Councillor Dryelly, Councillor Henderson and myself, Councillor Hewitt. And so the motion is carried unanimously. And I note that again, endorsed taking care of those in our community who face hardship. Councillor, item 14.2. I'd like to introduce Mr. Christian Watt, introduce the revised councillor staff interaction policy 2021. Ms. Ford.
Councillors, and through you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, you'll note that I've put forward tonight policy 37C, which is the councillor staff interaction policy, which has been reviewed to align with the guidance in the Councillor Code of Conduct and ensure consistency with the Local Government Act 2020. Specifically, section 46(3)(c) of the 2020 Act states that the CEO must manage the interactions between members of council staff and councillors and ensure that policies, practices and protocols are in place that support the arrangements for interactions between members of council staff and councillors, and that they are developed and implemented accordingly. The policy is really important to clarify the distinct roles of the administrative and political arm of council, and really aims to strengthen the interactions and fostering of positive interactions between both. This policy was last developed and reviewed in February 2014, and it's fair to say that times have changed, and as has legislation. The review and update of the policies ensures that policies remain contemporary and relevant and consistent with such legislation, particularly with the revision of the Local Government Act 2020. And it's really important that this council has an opportunity to endorse and adopt and note a particular policy in their term that affects them and relates to them. The purpose of the policy provides guidance to both employees, as I mentioned before, and councillors, the elected representatives of council. And it really does aim to foster that positive and appropriate interaction between both. It's important to note that the policy becomes a position that both councillors and members of council staff would need to equally abide by, in line with their respective obligations. And these are set out clearly in the policy in both provisions relating to council's obligations and members of council staff obligations. Staff will be advised of the provisions of this policy and ensure that they also understand their respective obligations, and a whole host of communications will be enacted as of tomorrow once this policy is noted and becomes in force under the CEO's obligations. The policy was developed in line with the legislation, as I mentioned, but also a review against other Victorian councils and what their policy said. We wanted to ensure that it was consistent with council's plans and policies and the Council Code of Conduct and the Employee Code of Conduct. We amended the title to reflect a more appropriate title being interaction, and of course it does relate to the Local Government Act 2020. Councillors, there is a recommendation before you, and that recommendation is that council notes policy 37C as prepared by the CEO, titled Council Staff Interaction Policy, under the CEO's obligations under section 46(3)(c) of the Local Government Act 2020.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Is there any questions of Ms. Ford? Councillor Henderson.
Through you, Madam Mayor. There's a bit of an omission there that I thought might be covered somewhere, but I just couldn't see it. And that is an obligation by the staff not to deliberately mislead a councillor. Because I've known, not recently, but in the past, where incorrect information has been given to councillors and knowingly given to councillors, which has led to them making decisions that weren't in the best interests of anybody.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Henderson, you're very correct. There is obligations that are bestowed upon employees that we must not mislead or inappropriately provide advice to councillors, and that again is part of our obligation as a member of council staff. We're governed under our Employee Code of Conduct, and should there be a breach of any such misleading information provided, the CEO would then enact a review of that employee under the Code of Conduct.
Thank you. Any other questions of Ms. Ford? In which case I'm in search of a motion. Do I have Councillor Simpson moves the motion, seconder? Councillor Hood. So that as read out by Ms. Ford. Does anyone, Councillor Simpson, you want to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that it's very good that this new interaction policy is adopted, and it, as councillors, it sort of reinforces the way we behave towards council staff and vice versa. So I'm very pleased to adopt this new policy.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Councillor Hood, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just to note, Madam Mayor, that as in any organisation, it's important to have guidelines and rules under which we all should operate. In council, we have a group of councillors and we have many council officers. It's important that there's clarity on our respective roles and how we interact, and believe that this policy sets that out quite clearly.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. Do any other councillors want to speak to the motion? Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Then I'll put the motion. All those in favour, raise your hand. Councillor Henderson, Councillor Dryly, Councillor Bray, Councillor Hood, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Holiday and myself, and I declare the motion carried. Item 14.3, the Annual Plan 2021 Q3 update, January to March 2021. Mr Burgess, can you introduce this report, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report provides a list of the projects included in the annual plan for 2020-2021, and a progress comment has been provided for each project by a responsible officer for the period ending 31st of March 2021. Councillors, it should be noted that the annual plan does not include all projects to be undertaken during the year, and it was adopted in August 2020, so it does not include a number of newer actions and opportunities that have been undertaken by council, which were not previously included in the plan. Some projects have been delayed as a result of announcements of government funding. I'll speak to that further in a second, but delays in project delivery in recent months as a result of impacts of COVID-19 are also noted. In relation to the recent announcements of government funding, obviously we're very excited at council in relation to securing funding out of our key state government partners, particularly Regional Development Victoria and Sport and Rec Victoria. And the projects that have already been spoken about here tonight, I won't go back over again, councillors, but I will bring your attention to a number of projects that have been completed and are recognised in this report. And that includes the customer service at Trentham being put in place, the Clunes Town Hall project being completed during this period, the community engagement policy, which is obviously a major policy for this council, being completed and enacted, the Buy Local campaign around supporting our businesses throughout the Shire being undertaken as well during this period. We've also have, and just one last one, the waste transition plan that is being completed and has been recognised as being finalised in this document. As outlined, councillors, there are a number of projects that we have also made some significant progress on during this period, and I fully expect that we will have a number of projects that are currently on track completed by the end of the financial year. Councillors, I won't go through obviously the rest of those projects, but there is a recommendation there for council to consider, and that recommendation is that council notes the annual plan for 2020-21 Q3 updates, and notes that this report will be published on council's website. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Mr Burgess. Are there any questions of Mr Burgess about the Q3 update?
Yes.
Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, surprise, but I think everyone knows what I'm going to ask. We've had a government funding for a project in Creswick at Cullenburn, and it seems to have gone off the radar. I just wanted, for the public record, to know that that project is going to be done, and perhaps a timeline, because I don't see it in here. Thank you. And I know you did say that the projects aren't all here.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Henderson, for that question. And I can tell you that it hasn't gone off the radar, that it certainly needs to be delivered. I won't tell you an answer I don't have tonight in relation to the timeline, but I will undertake through you, Madam Mayor, to come back to council with a timeline for delivery on that project, and hopefully assure you, Councillor Henderson and other councillors, that that project is important and we will be progressing it.
Lucas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to add to Mr Burgess's comments, the toilet facilities at Callumbean Park have been separated out from the rest of the public toilet works that council's been taking, and we currently have, or recently had in the market, a procurement process to facilitate the design and the scoping of that project so that we can actually get the construction contract let. I'm not sure whether that procurement project has recently ended, but I know it was commenced a few weeks ago. So it is on track and it is starting to move.
Councillor Henderson, is that fine? Thank you. Any other questions of Mr Burgess? In which case I'll put the officer's, I'm in search of a motion for the officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Dryly, seconded Councillor Hood. Councillor Dryly, do you want to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Councillor Hood, anyone else want to speak to the motion? Anyone want to speak against? Then I'll put the motion that council notes the annual plan 2021, Q3 updates, and notes that this report will be published on the council website. All those in favour? Councillor Henderson, Councillor Dryly, Councillor Bray, Councillor Hood, Councillor and Councillor Halliday and myself, Councillor Hewitt, and the motion is carried. Item 14.4, Hepburn Hub Loan Contract Delegation. Mr Burgess.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the ordinary meeting of Council on the 21st of July 2020, Council adopted its budget for the 2020-21 year. Whilst doing so, Council also declared borrowings for the financial year 2020-21 of $3.012 million for the completion of the Hepburn Hub. Quotes for the loan were invited from financial organisations within the region who were deemed to have the capacity to offer a loan of this magnitude. A list of those organisations are provided in the body of this report. Councillors, an evaluation panel will be formed, and it will be the responsibility of that panel to evaluate the quotes and make a recommendation on which quote to accept. The evaluation criteria is also detailed within the body of this report. The length of the loan term, councillors, is 10 years. It is a fixed interest rate loan, and the market rates at the moment are varying, but currently there are very competitive rates that are being offered in the sector. Councillors, the recommendation is that Council delegates authority to the Chief Executive Officer, to accept a quote for loan 24 for $3.012 million for the completion of the Hepburn Hub. Authorises the Chief Executive Officer and the Mayor to sign and seal all relevant loan documents on behalf of Council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Burgess. Are there any questions of Mr Burgess on this matter? No? In which case I'm in search of a motion. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Hood, seconded Councillor Dryly. Thank you. Councillor Dryly. Councillor Hood, do you want to speak to the motion?
No, thanks, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Dryly, do you? Does any other councillor want to speak to the motion? Does anyone want to speak against the motion? Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My position on the RECs was made quite clear in the last meeting. I'm against the project proceeding, and therefore I don't support any actions that precede the project, such as this motion. I don't want to disrupt the running of the Shire, yeah, as I said, I'm against this project, so I can't support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Councillor Hood, do you want to have a right of, or any other councillor wishes to speak against the motion? Councillor Hood, do you have a right of reply?
Well, I'll just comment, Madam Mayor, that I believe the council has safeguarded its position by taking out the resolution earlier this evening, where we have asked for a workshop to be held prior to the June council meeting. so within the next month, literally, to examine all of our options there. My understanding is that this motion simply enables yourself as Mayor and the Chief Executive to undertake the loan at some point in the future as needed. So I don't think there's a contradiction here. In fact, I think we have a safeguarded position. So I don't see any problem in authorising the two of you to undertake this loan. It doesn't necessarily preempt any outcomes out of our workshop in the next month.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. Councillor Darling?
No, thank you.
Okay, so I'll put the motion as the officer's recommendation. All those in favour? Councillor Halliday, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Dryly, Councillor Bray, Councillor Hood, Councillor Hewitt. All those against? Councillor Simpson. The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 14.5, recommendations to council from the Audit and Risk Committee. Ms Ford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, councillors, the purpose of this report is to bring to you advice from the Audit and Risk Committee meeting that was held on the 22nd of February this year. You may know that the Audit and Risk Committee was established by Council via resolution on the 28th of August 2020 in line with Section 53 of the Local Government Act 2020. The purpose of the Audit Committee is to oversee and monitor the effectiveness of Council in carrying out its responsibilities for accountable financial management and risk, good corporate governance, provide excellence and experience in public sector management, and the maintenance of systems of internal control and the fostering of ethical environments. The Audit and Risk Committee is not a delegated committee of Council and cannot exercise statutory functions and powers of Council under delegation. And it realistically acts as an advisory board on behalf of Council with independence. The Audit and Risk Committee meetings are closed to the public, and so what officers do is prepare a report that provides a list of the recommendations that come out of that particular meeting, as well as a public set of meeting minutes for transparency purposes around what the Audit Committee considers and what recommendations need to be ratified by Council. Councillors, there is a recommendation before you that Council receives the draft meeting minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting that was held on the 22nd of February this year and notes the recommendations and resolutions of the Audit and Risk Committee that were moved at the meeting and that are detailed in the body of this Council report.
Thank you, Ms Ford. Are there any questions of Ms Ford? In which case, Councillor Henderson.
Anyone else? I notice in that report, through you, Madam Mayor, that there are vacancies or a vacancy, at least one created. What have we done to fill that?
Sure. Councillor Henderson, through you, Madam Mayor, you will be aware, councillors, that there are 2 vacancies at the moment with respect to independent committee members. The Audit and Risk Committee is made up of 4 independent committee members and 2 councillor delegates. Unfortunately, there's 2 of those members that have lapsed in their membership. One of those members, Mr Trevor Shard, can reapply as per the Audit Committee Charter. A recruitment campaign has been enacted. That was enacted on the 12th of May, in which we've gone out to recruit for the right calibre of independent committee members with risk management, internal control, good governance and public sector oversight. And that will close on the 26th of May. A recruitment process will then follow. That will then have a panel review the shortlisting, and interviews will then proceed from that. And then moving forward, Council will be recommended with a motion or an officer recommendation rather around appropriate independent committee members. And then they will be adopted hopefully by Council and then inducted and prepared for the first Audit and Risk Committee meeting that's scheduled for the 28th of June.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we've got an officer recommendation before us. Councillor Henderson, seconded Councillor Halliday. You don't want to speak to the motion, Councillor Henderson? Councillor Halliday? Anyone want to speak against the motion? In which case, all those in favour? Councillor Henderson, Councillor Dryly, Councillor Bray, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Halliday and myself, Councillor Hewitt. The motion is carried and thank you, Ms Ford. Can I ask you to introduce item 14.6, which is the review of mayoral and councillor allowances pursuant to section 74 of the Local Government Act 1989.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, Madam Mayor, and to councillors, Mayor and councillors across local government in Victoria are entitled to receive an allowance while performing as an elected official. Pursuant to section 39 of the Local Government Act 2020, which is the legislation that we look to most commonly at this point in time, allowances for the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor and the councillors are provided in accordance with a determination of the Victorian Independent Remuneration Tribunal under the Victorian Independent Remuneration Tribunal and Improving Parliamentary Standards Act 2019. Despite the repeal of the allowance provisions in the Local Government Act 1989, those sections actually still remain in effect and continue to apply in respect of allowances in such time until that determination is made under the 2020 Act and through the Victorian Independent Remuneration Tribunal. So now we look to section 74 of the Local Government Act 1989 and officers and councillors' obligations in order to review the allowances of the Mayor and councillors by the 30th of June. Accordingly, councillors are required to review and determine the level of mayoral and council allowances, as I mentioned, within 6 months after a general election or before the 30th of June, whichever is later. And it's really important to note that a person has the opportunity to make a submission under section 223 of the Local Government Act 1989. This is a provision of the legislation that is still in force and a very prescribed and statutory process in which a person who wants to make a written and or a verbal submission can do so under the prescribed section 223, which is detailed at the consultation part of the report. The officer's recommendation that is before councillors tonight really supports the fact that Maryland Council allowances, the Hepburn Shire Council, is set at the highest limit in Category 1. It is believed that the councils undertake their duties and functions and civic responsibilities at a really high standard, and the allowance actually reflects this positive outcome for the community and the responsibilities that are bestowed upon them. Pardon me. So the officer's recommendation that is before you, council, is that council endorse in principle the setting of the mayoral and council allowances at the top of level 1 category, which is $62,884 for the mayor and $21,049 for council allowances, plus an additional 9.5% of the above allowance payable as equivalent of the Commonwealth Superannuation Guarantee. The recommendation also states that council authorises the commencement of the statutory process for the mayor and council allowances in accordance with Part 5 of the Local Government Act 1989 by giving public notice of its intention to make a mayor and council allowance and inviting those submissions under section 223, which I mentioned before. Notes that the invitation of submissions will be from Wednesday the 19th of May to Tuesday the 15th of June 2021, which is starting tomorrow, that the CEO be given authority to make all the administrative amendments in relation to conducting a meeting under section 223 of the Local Government Act 1989 that is being scheduled to be undertaken at the ordinary council meeting scheduled for Tuesday the 22nd of June 2021. And then receive a report to a special council meeting scheduled for 29th of June 2021 to consider the adoption of the mayoral and council allowances. Councillors, I just will note that on page 180 of your agenda papers, there is a range of dates there that the community should draw their attention to with respect to when the process will commence, when it will close, the provision hearing of submissions, and when council will ultimately hear those submissions, should there be any request to make a verbal submission, and then when the allowance will come into effect, which is really important to councillors and community to know.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Any questions? Case, I'm in search of a motion as read out by Ms. Ford. Officer's recommendation. Do I have a move? Councillor Simpson, seconded Councillor Bray. Councillor Simpson, do you want to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The motion before us is to, for the clarity for the community, it is to adopt the higher level that councillors have an option for their own allowance. And I want to say it always looks good when politicians take a pay cut, especially in hard times, as a way of showing their solidarity with those in their community who are also doing it tough. But there is a good reason why we would adopt the officer's recommendation to look for the higher level. We're talking 2,844,000 for the mayoral allowance, 21,049,000 for councillors. And the reason why we would opt for that higher amount is that if the allowance is too low, councillors will need to take on extra work, possibly full-time work, in order to be able to support themselves. This doesn't leave them the available time and the accessibility that they will need to look after the community's needs and to adequately fulfil their duties as a councillor. So for that reason, I would support the adoption of the highest level that is outlined in the officer's recommendations in principle. Thank you.
Councillor Bray, does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Does anyone wish to speak against the motion? In which case I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour of the motion as read out by Ms Halliday, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Dryly, Councillor Bray, Councillor Hood and myself, Councillor Hewitt, the motion is carried. Item 14.7, records of councillor attendance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is an administrative report. The purpose of the report is for council to receive and note records of councillor attendance, formerly known as assemblies of councillors, records required to be presented under provision of the Local Government Act 1989. Councillors, on page 184 of your agenda is a list of the record of councillors' attendances. I won't read through those individually, but it details all those meetings between the 11th of March and the 4th of May that has been attended. And the recommendation is that council receives and notes the records of councillor attendance as detailed in the report.
Thanks, Mr. Burgess. Mr. Burgess. Then I'm in search of a motion to move. Councillor Henderson, seconded. Councillor Bray, that council receives and notes the records of council attendance as detailed in the report. It's in the agenda. Councillor Henderson, do you want to speak to the motion? Councillor Bray, anyone else want to speak to the motion? Anyone against? Then I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Halliday, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Hood, Councillor Bray, Councillor Dryly, Councillor Henderson and myself, Councillor Hewitt. We're now at agenda item 15, and this is the closure of the meeting to members of the public. Councillors, I acknowledge that there's a confidential matter that council will need to consider tonight, outlined in the confidential ordinary council meeting agenda for 20th of April 2021. Councillors, I'm seeking a motion to close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 66(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 2020. Please note that should a motion be carried to move the meeting into confidential, then the meeting will cease to be live streamed and this meeting will no longer be available for the community to view or record. Councillors, I'm now seeking a mover and a seconder for the motion to close the meeting to the public as outlined in the recommendation. Do I have a mover? Councillor Simpson, do I have a seconder? Councillor Henderson. Do you want to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
No. Anyone else? Do you want to speak against the motion? Can I just note that for the members of the public that council goes into confidential when there's specifically has to consider business information that being information that would prejudice, if released, if prematurely released, would prejudice the council's position in commercial negotiations, or private commercial information being information provided by a business, commercial or financial undertaking that relates to trade secrets, and if released would unreasonably expose the business, commercial or financial undertaking to disadvantage, and that this applies at this time because the agenda concerns the details of a contractual and commercial negotiation that would, if prematurely released, diminish the strength of council's position in those negotiations and unreasonably expose the business, commercial or financial undertaking to disadvantage. So I put the motion. Is all those in favour? Councillor Henderson, Councillor Drive, Councillor Bray, Councillor Hood, Councillor Howard, Councillor Simpson and myself, Councillor Hewitt. So the meeting will now be closed. We'll end the Zoom meeting and the end of live streaming, and the end of live recording, but we'll come back to that in between 5 and 10 minutes, depending on the amount of time the business takes. Thank you, Mr. White. Can you please close the